Hi. So on Friday, I had something really weird and really scary happen to me, but also kind of interesting. And I thought I would make a video about it because, I don't know, I think it taught me something. And maybe it can be educational for you too. The title, I'm sure, unless I decided to go with some bizarre clickbaity title, has given it away, but I'll tell you the whole story from the start. So on Friday at work, I've been reading this book. So I was reading during lunch. The book is called The Midnight Disease, and it's about hypergraphia, which is a syndrome, a sort of symptom of various things where you have this like compulsion to write. I had actually first heard of this in an email from a fan that I was talking with, and I'm not going to try to pronounce their name because they're Thai, but shoutouts to you. They suggested that this might be something I learn about, that maybe it's something that I might have to some extent, which I think is true. Like, I do really have a compulsion to write. I feel a lot happier if I'm able to write. If I go too long without writing, I start feeling upset about that, you know? So I've been reading this, and it deals a lot with like neurology in the brain. It's by a neurobiologist and doctor, so she really takes like a very medical approach to it. So that's been cool. It's been very educational. So hypergraphia is often a symptom of epilepsy, and the first chapter focuses quite a bit on epilepsy. And I had no reason to think I was epileptic, but as is the cliche when you're reading about like a disease of any sort, you start kind of matching up the symptoms with like specific incidents in your life. And I start thinking, oh man, what if I'm actually epileptic? What if I've just been extremely lucky that I've never had a seizure? So you know, I was like thinking about that sort of stuff. I was thinking about hypergraphia, and when I read things like this, it sometimes really affects me. When I read things about like how the brain works, mental illness, anything about the body in general actually kind of just makes me a little uncomfortable. Especially with needles. I'm the worst with needles. I can't even look at an image of someone getting a needle without feeling really uncomfortable and a bit faint. There was an incident in grade 9 in health class. Um, we were watching an anti-steroid video, like a steroid awareness video, and there was a shot of someone injecting themselves, and I passed out. I just like immediately hit the floor. I slumped out of my desk. It was a pretty frightening incident. I just remember coming to minutes later, like there's just a big gap in my memory with my gym teacher being like, oh, good, you're not dead. Oh, thank God, because apparently I was just right out. And then other incidents where I've had needles for like flu shots or donating blood or whatever, I really cannot think about what's happening or look at it or anything like that without really a lot of mental distress. So when I was reading this book at lunch, as I have been for, I don't know, 2 or 3 days now, I kind of felt this feeling coming up again where I feel like really gripped by it and really intensely invested and interested, and then this really kind of creepy feeling coming over me, and I don't even dislike it necessarily. It really makes the whatever I'm reading or whatever I'm watching or whatever have a major impact on me if it comes with this feeling as well. So then later that day, um, that night, I was just at home chatting with some friends, watching video games, streaming, you know, just normal dicking around on the internet stuff. And I think I saw like somebody had linked a post on Facebook to the subreddit Humans Being Bros. So I was like, okay, I'll check this subreddit out. So I sorted by all top posts from all time, which is a good way to browse new Reddits. And I was, you know, these are really nice. These are like nice stories, clips of people doing really nice things. It was a nice subreddit, and I started feeling pretty emotional, you know, like as is the intent of the subreddit. I felt pretty invested. And then I got to this post, which is about Steve-O of Jackass. He's like thanking his friends for locking him up in a psychiatric ward when he was really at the edge with like drug use and stuff. And I was like, oh, I don't really know too much about this. I'm gonna read the comments. Oh wow, this one was 19 hours ago. I was like, why didn't I look at this one? But it just got here. Anyways, so I'm reading this, and there was like a long, yeah, this thread about whippets, and I'm not actually gonna read it again, because as I started reading it, the effects of whippets, which are these drugs here, which is like a tiny little nitrous oxide container that you huff. As I started reading the effects of those, I felt this bad feeling start building up again. But I was also really interested. I hadn't really heard about these before. I didn't really know what they were like. Like I had heard of them vaguely, but I had never read first-hand accounts of people who had done them, which is like what's in here. And it started really like building up in my body. It was like a very physical sensation. But I didn't really think that much of it, you know? I was just like, okay, like I'm learning something. And I kept going. Oh, well, at some point I stopped. And this I think is pretty common, that if I'm reading about something like this, or if I'm watching something like this, and I start to get this uncomfortable feeling, to an extent I'll be invested, and to an extent I'll be very interested. Then at a certain point I'll just cut myself off, I can't take it anymore, and I'll go on and read something else, which is what I did here. But then, pretty soon after that, there was this GIF that I opened. Cashier notices the lady exhibiting signs of a seizure and grabs her baby before it fully hits her. And when I watched this woman have a seizure. I'm not going to watch it again, just in case. But it like really hit me. Like it really, everything kind of rushed back. I was thinking about epilepsy. I was thinking about the book I was reading. I was still remembering very clearly the effects of the whippets that people were describing. And I can tell, because I opened these links, that I opened a few more and looked at them, but I don't remember seeing them at all. Because at that point, I just started really quickly and vividly picturing like lots of things that were just happening in my life recently. Like I saw scenes from work, I saw scenes of things that had happened last night. Like all of these things just started flooding my vision. And I was like, I remember thinking pretty lucidly, like, oh, this isn't good. Like something has gone a little too far. And I started thinking, like, at first I thought, like, wouldn't it be weird if this was a seizure? Wouldn't that be like the craziest coincidence ever? If after reading about seizures and watching someone have a seizure, I actually had a seizure just out of the blue. And like really smoothly, without examining the logic behind it, it went from wouldn't it be weird if I was having a seizure to like, oh god, I must be having a seizure. And my body became like very tense. I think I maybe tried to like move or something, stand up, kind of catch my breath, I don't know. But I fell out of my computer chair. I slumped down kind of onto the ground. I was just kind of like stiff. I couldn't really move my body very well. I knocked my mouse off of my desk. I didn't even notice that until I came to. I was like, where's my mouse? I ended up sitting on the floor. My ears were ringing extremely loudly, like louder than they'd ever been from like a concert or anything. I was sweating a lot. I was breathing kind of like raggedly. There was a time during it that I was like, oh man, this could be it. Like I could just be dying right now. It was genuinely terrifying. The whole thing lasted less than a minute, like that really severe period. And then for, I would say, about 10 minutes afterwards, I just sat on the floor, really uncomfortable, not really in pain, but uncomfortable, and like with this loud, intense ringing in my ear and all of that. And I couldn't even lie down. I thought at one point while I was sitting there, like, oh, I'd probably be more comfortable if I was lying down, but I couldn't like relax my body enough to just lie down on the floor. So yeah, I was like, oh geez, I think this is a seizure. So after about 10 minutes or so, yeah, I kind of got more coordinated. Felt like I could move my body again. The ringing in my ears was dying down. So I grabbed my phone, just sitting on my desk. I was able to reach up and grab that. And I texted the group chat that I was in with my friends that I was talking in before. I was like, holy shit, I think I just had a seizure. Um, and I tried to write down like everything that was happening, like everything that I remembered, just so that I wouldn't forget any of it. Because I knew at that point that I would have to go see a doctor or something. Some of my friends were like, "You should probably just go see a doctor right now, like even call 911 or something, go to the hospital." But at that point, I honestly was feeling like so much better. Like it was already fading away from me very very quickly. Um, and it was like minus 20 out or something. It's so disgustingly cold, and pretty late. So I really didn't want to. I was able to get up to the computer chair, get back sitting up, talking to my friends. I felt coordinated. I felt lucid. When I noticed that my mouse was on the floor, that kind of freaked me out because it was clear that there was like a gap in my memory and that something pretty extreme had happened. Same with seeing that I had opened these posts but did not remember at all looking at them. That freaked me out too. I was watching the Mario 64 streamer Cheese, um, and I remember like the tab wasn't open, but I could like hear his voice, and I was just thinking like, what? Like, why am I watching this? What was going on? Like, do I remember? So I was a little out of it, but more like that I was extremely lucid now, and it seemed like in retrospect I must have had been out of it. If that makes sense. Um, so I don't know. Maybe that was stupid of me, but I just stayed home. I just relaxed, watched some TV, went to bed, kind of when I normally do, and I slept great. I slept fine. Um, so my friends were kind of like researching things for me. I was very paranoid that it was because I was reading about it, that because reading about seizures had somehow tricked me into having a seizure. So I kind of stopped looking at it, but my friends found this a psychogenic non-epileptic seizure. So I thought this is maybe what I had, and this is very interesting to me. The idea that traumatic events, that if you have a trigger, that you see something very traumatic again, sort of like a post-traumatic stress disorder, it can actually cause a seizure. It can actually cause like a full grand mal seizure. So I thought at first that this was what I had. The next morning, I got up and I went to a walk-in clinic. Actually, I had to go to two walk-in clinics because the first one was closed, but whatever. I saw a doctor, and he said probably not a seizure. That was his take. That if it was a full-blown grand mal seizure, I wouldn't have recovered so quickly. I would have been much more incapacitated. There would have been a longer, complete blackout of memory. I wouldn't have been lucid at all for quite a while afterwards. So that makes sense to me. But what he proposed is that it was probably something more of like a panic attack or a incident of hyperventilation or something. So that kind of surprised me because my understanding of a panic attack, wow, that's grim. Complication suicide. Jesus. My understanding of a panic attack was that it's more like kind of a grounded psychological response. Like something terrible is actually happening. Like, oh my God, I have a test in 5 minutes and I didn't study for it. Or perhaps more uncommonly, like I have a test tomorrow and I can't make myself study for it. I'm just panicking, or you get some like terrible traumatic news. Oh my God, your entire family just died from something, um, and then you have a panic attack, which like panic there is a very reasonable response. Whereas I was having a panic attack. I suppose I was having a panic attack to the in response to the idea that I thought maybe I was having a seizure, but that the thought that I was having a seizure was brought on more by the extreme uncomfortable feeling of reading about drug experiences and reading about epilepsy and reading about things like that. So I suppose it makes sense. I don't know. It seems like weird that I would have a panic attack when I really didn't have anything distressing that I was actually thinking that I was experiencing. Like it was all in a hypothetical kind of realm, you know, all in the imagination. And yet I still panicked and possibly hyperventilated and had all these terrible things um, happen to me. It's strange. So I thought we would just read about panic attacks a bit and see if that's what's happening. If that seems like it matches up with the symptoms I had, um, or I don't know. What if thinking maybe? Maybe respiratory alkalosis. Oh, that's where your oxygen. Yeah, we were talking about this at the doctor's office a bit. Um, hmm. Yeah, I don't know. Weird though, right? Very, very weird. And it really that as this book does as well. It's really making me think a lot of the biology of the brain and the fact that thought, which we usually think of as totally immaterial and kind of free and loose, and that biology influences thought in kind of like a one direction relationship, that doesn't really make sense. Because when you're thinking, it's actually leading to physical changes in the brain in terms of activated regions of neurons and neural connections and things occurring at different kind of developmental stages of the brain, all the way down from your limbic nodes to your prefrontal cortex. And depending on those regions of activity, which again are just based entirely on thought, it can provoke some pretty severe physical responses by your entire body, which makes sense. But it's like, man, how dumb. Like, like, come on, brain. You're really gonna make me freak out about? I don't know. It's disappointed, disappointed in you. Because it always, I always thought of these things in terms of like, oh, you know, it gets your adrenaline pumping if you're afraid of something. But it always seemed like it had such basis and cause that it would relate back somehow to some actual risk that people would have in nature, right? Like you see a horror movie, you start thinking, "Oh God, the Babadook is coming for me," and it's triggering these sort of primal responses in your body that go all the way back from when we had to run from like saber-toothed tigers and stuff, right? Whereas this, it's like it's different. It's not that people in primordial times would have had uh, reason to worry about epilepsy, right? It just wouldn't occur in early man that he read some medical literature about the symptoms and effects of epilepsy and then started freaking out, right? Like it seems like these really ancient pathways in the brain are being uh, in I don't know. Do you get what I mean? It's just like funny to me. It's like I kind of glitched out my brain or something. Um, and it's kind of interesting to me too that I've it's a feeling that I recognize. Like it's a feeling that I know I've had on many occasions reading things, and usually like a good feeling. Like it's not that different from the feeling of intense emotion I get when I'm reading like a manga that I'm really into and I'm on the edge of my seat. I'm gripped in suspense. I'm emotionally linked to everything that's happening. It feels like I'm right on the edge of something. And now I know what the other side of that edge is. And it's not good. It really does make you feel like you're about to die. Um, so I solved that mystery of what would happen if I really pushed it too far past the limit. And I suppose it was sort of the feeling of like closing the one thread I'm not going to read any more about what it's like to do whippets. And then so soon after seeing this and starting to think really vividly and seeing, like maybe that has something to do with it too, that here it's like all imaginative, that I'm just like trying to go from just words to imagining the feeling, and then I'm hit from the exact opposite direction where I just see it, I see what it would look like, and then I have to like go backwards into what that would feel like, and then because of that, the like safety valve where I don't pour too much into the feelings was subverted. It was attacked from both angles, and then it overflowed. I'm a medical doctor. This is how they talk. Or rather, this sounds like the sort of analogy they would use on Star Trek or something. Anyways, yeah, so that was a weird experience. I hope it never happens again. I think I know better now what it feels like when it's coming up. It felt like I was just kind of being gripped by something internally. And what I kept thinking of when I was kind of trying to describe it to myself, remember the scene in One Piece in Thriller Bark where Usopp is fighting Perona, the ghost lady that can become totally insubstantiable or whatever, and she threatens Usopp by reaching into his chest and saying, "I'm gonna squeeze your heart. My hands are right around your heart right now." And she's just bluffing. She's just trying to freak him out. She can't actually resubstantiate inside his body. But whatever. It felt like that. It felt like somebody was telling me that, and I was believing them, and that any second they were actually going to grip my heart. But instead, I just did it to myself. So yeah, weird times. I guess that's about all I have to say about it. Let me know. Have you experienced something like this before? Do you think hit me with the diagnosis? Is there something else it could be? I'm thinking it's probably this. The only thing that I haven't read is the fact that I was like hallucinating. That I can really remember like seeing a lot of like mental images and stuff, but they weren't like alien or weird things. It wasn't like a trippy hallucination. It was just really vividly like remembering a lot of things. I don't know. Weird. Okay. Yeah, that's all for now. Other videos to come shortly. Bye bye.